there was a House committee meeting in this committee meeting room immediately before our committee. So thank you very much to those in the gallery. If we could get to our agenda here would be great. The first item is, do we have any requests for bill introductions? Want to remind the committee that request for bill introductions in Judiciary Committee, the last opportunity to do that is, I'm going to check with the revisor, is February 5th. So make sure that if you intend to request a bill introduction in Senate Judiciary Committee, February 5th will be the last day for that. I don't see any requests for bill introductions. So we're going to address, I don't want to delay our presentation any longer. We've had our presenter here today ready to go, so we're going to get right to it. And with that, then, we will have an update on specialty courts in Kansas from Marissa Bayless, who is special counsel to the Chief Justice of the Kansas Supreme Court. Welcome to committee, and please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Marissa Bayless, I'm the special counsel to Chief Justice Lukert. I was asked to give an update on specialty courts in Kansas. It's a really exciting time for this program, and I'm happy to give that update. We've been before you a couple times before talking about specialty courts. The Chief Justice mentioned a little bit in her State of the Judiciary, but very quickly, just to give you kind of an overview of what specialty courts look like in practice. A specialty court is really a special docket set aside by a judge and court personnel. So like your protection order docket or your felony criminal docket, these are specific time periods where we have individuals who have qualified for specialty courts before the judge in that time. Specialty courts provide much more intensive supervision over individuals, and they expect a lot from the participants that are involved in these courts. This includes weekly or biweekly attendance at the courthouse for dockets, scheduled drug testing, required mental health or substance use abuse treatment, potentially required mentorship meetings, continuous updates to the court and supervision officers on employment, housing situation, and a lot of aspects of a participant's life. Specialty courts are a multidisciplinary team. We have judges, supervision, community health, substance use providers, defense attorneys, prosecutors, and others. They're all there for the actual docket, but prior to the docket beginning, we have staffing meetings. So all those individuals involved in the court will meet with the judge, and we go through each participant and the status of their case. If there has been anything that's changed, we want to keep everyone on the team apprised, and the judge has time to get more information if necessary. The actual docket itself, a lot of times specialty courts just generally look different from your regular criminal proceeding. Instead of an individual sitting at a table next to their attorney, a lot of judges ask the participants to sit in the jury box, and when their case is before the judge, they stand up. Even in this change in formality, it kind of sets a different tone with specialty courts. These participants, they interact with the judge and others much more frequently than a normal proceeding. Judges really get to know the individuals that are before them. They know what's going on in their life. And I think that that plays a really important role. Myself personally, my first year or summer, my 1L year in law school, I interned for a judge here in Kansas who had a adult drug court. One thing that became very imperative to me as I saw those proceedings is that the individuals themselves, because they're with each other so long, actually have expectations of each other. One individual, unfortunately, had tested positive on a UA after being clean for some time, and you could kind of see the disappointment in the other participants. It was palpable. So it creates that structure where not only the judge, but others around them have some expectations of other individuals. They want you to succeed. The judge isn't just a faceless robe or anything like that. They know that person, and they're counting on them to come to court and to do what they're required to do. The process to graduate from specialty court is generally longer and more intensive than regular supervision from your regular case. But really the goal of all specialty courts is to break the cycle of recidivism. So too many times we have individuals that are coming to court particularly for lower level drug possession charges. They serve their time in jail, they may be forced to get clean, and then when they get out, they have no support system. If they go back to their regular social group, they a lot of times are also still into drugs, so they fall into the same pattern, and we see them again for the same exact crime not too long after they've just been released. So we're really trying to treat these individuals, save them, the state money for this continuous cycle, and to really benefit the community in general. There are sanctions in specialty courts. So if a participant is not meeting expectations, the judge does hold the power to sanction that individual. That could be, putting someone in jail for 72 hours, depending on the severity, potentially expelling them from the specialty court if that is necessary. My written testimony does give you some numbers across the state. So we've continued to increase the number of specialty courts throughout the years. So right now we have 36 specialty courts across 16 of the 31 judicial districts. 6 opened in calendar year 2023, and as of right now, we plan to add 5 more in 2024. I will note that 6 of those specialty courts are actually either municipal specialty courts, so not necessarily the purview of the OJA, and then 2 tribal courts also have specialty courts, so those included in those 36. This year we'll also be operating a new model, which is the family treatment court model. We do have 2 committees that help spearhead specialty court growth. The specialty court committee, this was created a few years ago by Supreme Court rule. It reports directly to the Supreme Court, and it's really talking about development and programming aspect. And then not too long ago, I think in 2022, we passed a bill, the Specialty Court Funding Advisory Committee, which Senator Warren and I believe Senator Corson are now sitting on. And so that committee is obviously focusing on the funding aspect. That committee has been broken into subcommittees to look at federal funding, state funding. Currently, right now, we do not have any SGF dollars that directly go to specialty courts. So I know that committee is kind of trying to see what the pathways will be for that. So I imagine we could see something in the future, a request like that. But really, we wanted that committee to kind of take a really holistic look at everything that's out there and see what the state could provide if they would like. But funding and steady funding is probably the biggest barrier to specialty courts implementation and then sustaining them. It's been piecemeal. The federal government does provide a lot of grant funding for specialty courts, and a lot of our courts take advantage of that. The problem with federal funding is that it's usually for implementation. So the lifespan of that is not as long as we would like. And so once that grant ends, that specialty court's going to have to find other ways to provide that funding. Many specialty courts rely on counties to try to fund and pick up some of those costs. A lot of the counties have done a really great job about funding coordinator positions, which are really, really important. We have a statewide coordinator with an OJA now. We hired that person last year. So they assist with those committees. They also assist at a statewide level for districts to try and find grants, to help them plan better, seek expansion if they would like, and then develop local partnerships is really important in working with our community partners. I will send it to your committee assistant, Madam Chair, but I forgot to send an electronic copy. I do have a list of each specialty court in Kansas in the judicial district, what type of it is, and then in the county that it's technically serving. So I will send that to your committee assistant after this.
That would be great if you have a chart that
Yes.
explains all that. Great, thank you.
Of course, as always, if you would like to attend a specialty court or attend a graduation, our judges would love to have you. If you have not been able to attend at least a graduation, they're incredibly impactful and a really good thing to watch that's happening in your community. But I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? Senator Gossage.
Thank you so much for being here. I was reading through this and I still don't quite understand what specialty courts do.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some other folks like I that are listening on the WebEx that might appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So if an individual who was picked up, charged with regular drug possession charge. Normally, we would go through the regular process of a hearing. They would get sentenced if they were found guilty. They would most likely, depending on their criminal history score, would get sentenced to probation, potentially jail, depending on what it was. And then that person would go about their way. What really at that moment of charge, what we really work with our prosecutors and our defense attorneys, as well as our judges, is to look at what that individual, what's causing that behavior. Is that individual addicted to drugs? Is it a mental health issue? Are they trying to self-medicate? Depending on criminal history score, we might think that participant or that person would be eligible for a specialty court. Some specialty courts are pre-conviction. So if they graduate from a specialty court, their charge may be dropped or it may be lessened. So there's an incentive there for them. But really, instead of our regular supervision, this supervision requires a much more. Most supervision doesn't require you to report to the judge weekly. It just doesn't happen. This will. This kind of coordinates our multidisciplinary teams a little bit tighter and really gives that specialized focus on that individual. If we know that that individual is having a drug issue, but they're also having a housing issue, we can try to work with them to provide services within the community that might be available to them. So I would call it we call it special court because it is specialized to that individual. We're taking kind of that regular criminal justice cycle, and we're really trying to gear it toward what is causing that criminal behavior and what can we do to address that.
So then there are actual courts that are called specialty courts, and someone determines whether someone should go before this specialty court as opposed to.
Usually it's that specialty court team. We might get a referral from a DA or a county attorney and says, hey, I think this person may be a good fit for specialty court. He may be able to be successful. Can we see if he would be eligible? So there is some eligibility requirements. Obviously, a specialty court won't take higher level felonies. It won't take most violent crime. You are not going to be able to be eligible for specialty courts. A lot of times, especially for drug court and behavioral health court, it's a lot of lower level drug possession charges are the individuals that we see that keep coming back for that same exact charge. So we're trying to see what's causing that behavior. And if we can stop that behavior, then we could potentially stop the criminal behavior as well.
And my last question, Madam Chair, is how many specialty courts are there in Kansas and how many people have come before these specialty courts?
So I don't know if I know the answer to your last question. I can try to figure that out. Right now, we have 36 operating in Kansas.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that clarification, Marissa. And part of the referral process is that the defendant being referred has to be willing to participate in the specialty court, and they're explained what the requirements will be. You've got to weekly come before the judge. I mean, I've been to several specialty court, the Veterans Treatment Court graduations in Johnson County, which I think was the first specialty court in Kansas. And it's remarkable. And it's hugs everywhere from the participant in the specialty treatment court, from the teams that are helping with whether it's housing or drug treatment or whatnot, from the judge. Yeah. And it's really remarkable to see people kind of help self-lift themselves out of what you were talking about, like the cause of some of the bad behavior. There was one gentleman who I think was working at a restaurant, and he would report to the judge, to the court, how that was. And then at graduation, he brought a big cheesecake from the restaurant for us all to kind of share in his congratulations. And it's quite an accomplishment for those who make it to graduation. It's not an easy task. Yeah. So thank you for presenting about it. And next we have a question from Senator Steffen, and then a question from Senator Olson, and then from Senator Haley. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Senator Steffen.
Thank you. And you may have alluded to this, I might have missed it. But these specialty courts are obviously niche setups. They look like incredibly great opportunities to study as far as efficacy is concerned. So would you address that, number one? And number two, our courts are busy, to say the least. We have limited supplies of judges and such. How are these from a production standpoint? Do they create less productivity in cases heard or completed by a judge, or where does it fall in line with that? Please,
Yeah.
and thank you.
Of course. So the first question about data efficacy. So one thing that's been unique with special courts, and this has been across the nation, is that a lot of these were homegrown efforts. And so a lot of our specialty courts first started as one judge deciding, hey, I saw this work in this other state, I'm going to do that. And they just did it. Chief Judge St. Peter, he ran the first drug court. I believe he started it in 2008 down in Cali County. He's also starting the family treatment court now. It was to hear him talk about it kind of Wild West on what he was supposed to do and trying to shot in the dark. But he thought from what he saw was really effective. And so data point is one of our biggest jobs right now and tasks of our statewide coordinator. When I first started in my prior position as deputy, I had tried to gather data from all our judges who had specialty courts, and they all provided me data. The problem being is that they were all collecting different data points. Some were for fiscal year, some were for calendar year. They were all collecting them, but we had no way to kind of standardize this. So one of the first tasks for our statewide coordinator is to standardize that data to be able to provide it in a readable format for us as the Supreme Court to make sure, hey, this specialty court's not doing maybe as effective as it could be. What's happening there? What can we do to help? But also, if we're going to ask for funding, we obviously recognize that you want to see data points and things like that. So that's a priority. Specialty courts do take time out of it. I mean, we set aside a whole docket, potentially a whole afternoon for a specialty court. It asks a lot of our prosecutors to do that. They have to be able to sign on to spend some of their time that they may be doing other things, but they're going to set aside this. I think the buy-in, though, is really showing that we can, especially for those who see the same individuals every day, even in some of our larger communities, you know the individuals that are coming through the court system quite frequently and for the same exact reason. It gets kind of defeating after a while. It's that the system can't do anything. I think if we can provide some of that change, though, and innovation, I think it will help the community in general, and I think that's where our judicial partners see that possibility. Again, putting someone back into jail for another 6 months, and then they get out, and then within a month they're back in jail. We're costing the counties a lot by putting them in there. Typically, during a specialty court, the sign-on help is that your initial charge may have put you in jail, but if you are continuing to come and meet all your expectations in a specialty court, you may not be put in jail. So there's that carrot for individuals who obviously don't want to do that, but we are requiring a lot of them and to be successful in that. And there's always the potential of a sanction if they should not meet those expectations.
Thank you. Senator Haley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Bayless, for this review of what specialty courts are doing. I think I should first say that I guess no one else in the room would know except Jason Thompson would recall that years ago I was the solo sponsor for the specialty courts legislation, and it just didn't quite catch on. And it was because of what had happened in Wyandotte County with the Veterans Court, the veterans, kind of a trial balloon there. And I thought it was an idea that might have some merit. Was so glad to see it undertaken by the court and by the Judicial Council to study it, and that now here we are. I don't even know what year it was. I guess, again, only Jason Thompson would, because I don't even remember what year it was. My question is, and I was so happy to hear the chair speak to seeing it implemented, how the coalition that comes together from the support system internally by those who are siloed or who can be identified by their particular concern, if veterans or substance abuse or what have you, and to pre-treat or to work with those who have an ongoing interaction through their particular silo in that area. It really does help unclog, I guess, the system if you know or know ahead of time what area or arena you're dealing with and have seen this before to work it out. I guess getting to my question, have there been particular areas that have not seen the same level of participation? So Wyandotte County had a veterans court, for example. Has there been a balance struck where the need can or should be met? And I think you said you're going to send a chart out, some
Yes.
sort of chart that might answer the question that I have,
Yeah.
where we could plug the holes or work more closely with the data that we have that might further assist what I think has been a vital need for a long time. I'm so glad to see implemented.
Yeah, I think so there are specialty courts, some have, open and closed, I guess if we can call it that. Really that is a kind of a combination of a couple things. So Veterans Treatment Court obviously is specific to veterans. That population needs to be there. That might not all be present in a certain community depending on what it looks like. And so we may not be that court needs to really have that planning and future planning in mind to see, is this something that is sustainable? Are we going to have individuals that are going to benefit for the time that we're putting into this planning? One of our statewide coordinator we hired has really good background in project planning and kind of trying to assist those district courts of, okay, you really want to do this. Is this going to actually fit for your community? It sounds great, but we want it to be successful. We don't want you to not be able to do this in 6 months because you either didn't have the funding, you don't have enough participants for this kind of niche area. I pick on Veterans Treatment Court because it is so particular for those participants. Also, I think one thing that I've really noticed in our development is I really want to see more development in our rural communities. A lot of our judicial districts struggle with that because of the traveling requirements that happen in more rural areas. You're just more spread out. So it just takes a little bit more planning on the front end. In my written testimony, you'll see that the 11th Judicial District, so that's Cherokee, Crawford, and Labette, are going to start a district drug court. So that's trying to kind of combine our resources from all three of those counties. But it takes a lot of planning on the front end to make sure timing's right. We can get people to where they need to be. The 31st Judicial District, which is Allen, Wilson, Woodson, and Neosho counties, Chief Judge Kreitz there has had a long time drug court there. And we're trying to combine the resources of 4 counties to make sure that we can try to address everybody. But that's one thing to also consider too, is how we can help some of those rural communities who would really like to benefit from specialty courts, but they just may lack geography. Sometimes is running against us in that area. Access to certain institutions like mental health or the VA is such a crucial part in Veterans Treatment Court, of course, but it's not always accessible to everybody in the time that we would like. I don't know if that answers your question. I kind of went off a little base there, but hopefully I answered some of it.
Well, no, and Madam Chair, no, I'm accustomed to doing that myself. Go back along. And that's good to know. Are we able to look because back when the concept was new or still new, there were still in its infancy other states that were doing similarly what I had hoped by my solo offering of the bill way back when, that we could look at what other states were unilaterally doing. Have we seen or are we able to augment, especially, plugging the gap in distant parts or rural parts of the state, what other states may have done, or are there some innovative ways that we can look at that? I don't know. You do electronic filings are difficult, but what do we?
So at the national level, the Adult Drug Court really has a really good association that's nationwide. And so we like to try to send a lot of our judges and specialty court coordinators to those conferences to try to bring ideas back to Kansas, of course. For the Family Treatment Court, we had some OJA team members and some judges travel to both Oklahoma and to Iowa to watch how they conduct family treatment court and see if this could be a model that we could replicate in Kansas. The family treatment court, especially, I mean, those are going to be started in Miami, Cali, and Lyon County. So I don't know what the definition necessarily is now of rural, but some of those communities are a little bit farther from our major hubs, particularly Cali. And so trying to see what can work there and see how we can replicate that further west would be my goal and a hope for that I would have for specialty courts.
Great. Thank you again, Ms. Bayless, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And to dovetail for a minute on Senator Haley's points, it's good to see this committee itself in the last 3 years has done a lot of work on bills that would help get Kansans into specialty treatment courts and help set them up, and regarding eligibility too. So it's neat to hear that some of that, coming to fruition, especially when there are 5 more specialty courts to be opened in 2024. There were 6 in 2023. 2 of them were in the county I help represent, Johnson County Behavioral Health Court and Johnson County Adult Drug Court. So it seems that they're having success, these specialty courts, in the treatment that would help with the recidivism, which helps all of us. I have a small question. Does the district attorney or county attorney continue to supervise the case and have some involvement in case sanctions are needed? Or
Yes.
Tell us about that for a second.
Yeah, so the district attorney or county attorney that is assigned to a specialty court, they will be there for each docket. They will give recommendations to the judge to consider if an individual has violated terms or anything like that. So they are hand in hand. A specialty court won't work if we don't have buy-in from the prosecutors.
Great. Well, glad to hear we've got the stakeholders all at the table and in agreement on working with these. Committee, any other questions? I'm not seeing any. So thank you very much for visiting with us today and giving us a very detailed and comprehensive update. Appreciate it. Thank you. Committee, we are going to revisit the meeting minutes from the January 16th, 2024 meeting. If you'll recall that meeting from last week, it was a meeting also with the House Judiciary Committee. And I believe you have a proposed draft of those minutes in front of you in your committee documents. I understand that there were some questions about the House Judiciary Committee met in executive session. The Senate Judiciary Committee did not. And that is clarified in new paragraph, the third paragraph under update on judicial branch. So with that, is there a motion? Senator Haley.
Madam Chair, I believe the issue raised by Senator Baumgartner is best addressed or better addressed in the new draft of the minutes regarding the executive session. And I would move that we adopt the minutes, that we accept the minutes.
And a second from Senator Baumgartner. Did you want to speak to it?
Only that I think that it addresses it quite clearly and appropriately. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for the motion and the second. And as far as discussion, I want to thank Senator Baumgartner for her comments yesterday and bringing it to the attention of the committee and to get it recorded in the minutes. So thank you for bringing that up in the attention of the committee. So with that, if there's no further discussion, you all have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries and the minutes are approved. And thank you to our committee assistant and the reviser for helping us make sure we had that all correct. So it's a team effort always for committee. So thank you all. And with that, then we will, as you know, not be meeting on Friday, but we will be here tomorrow. And again, request for bill introductions. The last opportunity for that is February 5th. So with that, then, we don't have any other further business in front of us today. We are adjourned.